A sweet young girl was riding her bike around the quiet neighborhood. When her mother, Eleanor Hayes, stepped outside to check after preparing lunch, the girl had vanished without a trace. But 12 years later, while workers were renovating the basement of an old house, they uncovered a shocking object beneath the concrete floor, a discovery that would change everything. Silver Pine Grove was not a place where children went missing. This tree-lined town in the northeastern United States prided itself on safety and strong community bonds. Mornings were often thick with mist that drifted along winding roads shaded by towering pine forests, creating a dreamy, almost magical atmosphere. One late June afternoon, exactly at 3:17 p.m., Eleanor drove into her driveway as she did most days. At 42, her light brown hair was speckled with silver strands. She no longer tried to hide. The wrinkles around her eyes told stories of pain no mother should ever endure. She turned off her old car, grabbed her baking box and uniform, preparing for her early morning pastry shift. Her 8-year-old daughter, Lily Vance, whose laughter sounded like wind chimes, was happily pedaling her bright yellow bicycle named Sunshine up and down the peaceful cul-de-sac. Her golden hair was tied into 2 braids, each secured with cornflower blue ribbons that bounced with every enthusiastic push of the pedals. Inside their ivy-covered cottage, Eleanor hummed along to the radio while the aroma of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies, their special recipe with extra chips, filled the warm kitchen air. "Lunch in 10 minutes, sweet pea," Eleanor called through the open window. "Okay, Mommy." Lily's cheerful reply floated back, followed by more giggles as she pretended her bike was a racing car, complete with engine noises. Eleanor smiled, setting the golden cookies on a cooling rack. She laid out 2 plates, poured tall glasses of milk, and placed a small bouquet of wildflowers. Lily had picked that morning in a jam jar at the center of the kitchen table. The clock ticked steadily. 5 minutes passed, then 10. "Lily, bug, lunchtime," Eleanor called again, a bit louder. Silence. Only the lazy buzz of a bee visiting honeysuckle by the porch and the distant rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. A faint frown creased Eleanor's forehead. Lily was always punctual for meals, especially when cookies were involved. Wiping her hands on her apron, she stepped onto the porch. "Lily?" The cul-de-sac was empty. Sunshine, Lily's bright yellow beacon, was gone. A cold, prickling fear ran down Eleanor's spine. "Lily." Her voice tightened. She walked to the end of their short driveway, scanning the street. Mrs. Henderson's cat Marmalade blinked at her from a sunny spot on a neighboring lawn, but there was no sign of a little girl on a yellow bike. Panic, swift and cold, gripped Eleanor. "Lily!" Her voice became a shout, trembling uncontrollably. She ran across the street to the Petersons. No, they hadn't seen her. Old Mr. Gable, tending his roses, shook his head, his kindly face etched with concern at the fear in Eleanor's eyes. Within minutes, the tranquil afternoon shattered. Doors opened, neighbors poured out, faces mirroring Eleanor's growing terror. The search began an ever-widening circle of frantic inquiry. The small playground at the street's end, the creek bank where Lily loved to find smooth stones, the wooded path leading to Miller's farm. Nothing. Eleanor's world, once so vibrant with Lily's light, began to shrink and dim until only a raw, aching void remained where her daughter had been. The cookies cooled on the rack. The milk warmed on the table. The sun, no longer kind, began its slow, indifferent descent, painting the sky with cruel shades of orange and purple. When the first Silver Pine Grove police cruiser arrived, lights flashing silently, night was settling, bringing a chilling dread. Officer Miller, whose children had played with Lily, tried to offer reassurance, but his eyes betrayed the gravity of the situation. The search intensified, escalating from a neighborhood concern to a town-wide emergency. Flashlights cut through the growing darkness. Voices called Lily's name, echoing through the silent woods. Eleanor, wrapped in a neighbor's shawl, trembling uncontrollably, could only stare into the deepening shadows, her mind replaying the last glimpse of Lily on Sunshine, her laughter fading into a torturous echo. Where could she be? It was just a bike ride around the house. How could a bright, sunny little girl simply vanish? Vanish as if swallowed whole by the earth itself, leaving behind only the suffocating silence of a summer afternoon turned endless night. The scent of unbaked cookies forever branded Eleanor's soul, a haunting reminder of the moment her world irrevocably shattered. The 12 years that followed were a landscape of muted colors and hollow sounds for Eleanor Vance. Havenwood Creek, once a symbol of idyllic safety, became a constant, painful reminder. Every corner, every sun-dappled path, every child's laugh carried an echo of Lily. The ivy-clad cottage, once filled with warmth and her daughter's vibrant energy, grew quiet, its rooms heavy with unspoken grief. Her marriage to Tom, Lily's father, had crumbled under the unbearable weight of their shared sorrow. He'd sought solace in blame, his accusations that she hadn't watched Lily closely enough, that she'd been too engrossed in her baking, carving fresh wounds into Eleanor's already shattered heart. He moved to the city a year after Lily's disappearance, leaving Eleanor alone with the ghosts and the suffocating guilt that was her constant companion. She'd thrown herself into her work, transforming her passion for baking into a small, beloved bakery in the heart of Havenwood Creek, the Morning Loaf. The precise measurements, the rhythmic kneading of dough, the alchemy of turning simple ingredients into comfort for others. It was a fragile shield against the chaos that had consumed her life. The early mornings, the scent of yeast and sugar, the warmth of the ovens, these became her rituals, a way to mark the passage of time that otherwise seemed to have stopped on that terrible July afternoon. The investigation into Lily's disappearance had long gone cold. Leads dried up, sightings proved false, and gradually the police presence faded. But Eleanor never stopped. She papered the town, then the county, then the state, with Lily's smiling face. She contacted missing children's organizations, haunted online forums, and chased down every whispered rumor, every fleeting, improbable hope. Each dead end was another small death, yet she persisted, fueled by a mother's unyielding love and a refusal to let Lily become just another forgotten statistic. The town, initially united in horror and support, slowly moved on as communities do. Sympathetic glances turned into awkward silences. Life, for others, continued. But for Eleanor, it was a life lived in parentheses, forever waiting. On a crisp October afternoon, 12 years to the season, though not the day, of Lily's vanishing, Eleanor was wiping down the counters at the Morning Loaf, the scent of cinnamon and apples from the day's pies still lingering in the air. The bell above the door chimed, but it wasn't a customer. It was Detective Marcus Thorne. Thorne had been a young officer back then, one of the many who had combed the woods for Lily. Now, his dark hair was threaded with silver at the temples, his face etched with the weariness of too many unsolved cases, but his eyes still held a spark of the determination Eleanor remembered. He'd become the lead investigator on Lily's cold case a few years ago, a quiet, persistent presence who checked in periodically, even when there was nothing new to report. "Eleanor," he said, his voice low and gentle. He rarely used her first name. A knot tightened in Eleanor's chest. She'd learned to dread the unexpected, the deviations from her carefully constructed routine. "Marcus, what is it?" He took a deep breath, his gaze steady on hers. "We found something, Eleanor. Something related to Lily's case." The world tilted. The familiar scent of the bakery, the warmth of the cooling ovens, the comforting weight of the damp cloth in her hand, it all receded. 12 years of waiting, of hoping, of dreading this very moment, converged into a single sharp point of unbearable anticipation. "What?" Her voice was a mere whisper. "What did you find?" "Are you sitting down?" he asked, his concern evident. She nodded numbly, though she remained standing, gripping the edge of the counter for support. "Renovators, working on the old Holloway place out on Whispering Pines Road. It's an Airbnb now. They were breaking up the garage floor to do some plumbing work." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "They found a bicycle, Eleanor, buried under the concrete." The air left Eleanor's lungs. The Holloway place. It wasn't far from their old cul-de-sac, maybe a mile through the woods, a bit longer by road. A place that had been under construction, largely unoccupied, around the time Lily disappeared. "A bicycle?" she managed, her mind struggling to connect the pieces. Thorne's eyes were full of a sorrow that mirrored her own. "It's small, yellow, with a basket, plastic daisies on the front. Sunshine." The name echoed in the cavern of her memory. Lily's bright, beloved sunshine, buried, entombed under concrete for 12 long years. The image was a physical blow, stealing her breath, making her knees buckle. Thorne was there in an instant, his hand on her arm, steadying her, guiding her to one of the small cafe chairs. "We need you to come and identify it, Eleanor," he said softly, after giving her a moment to absorb the shock. "If you feel up to it." Feel up to it? It was a grotesque understatement. This was the first tangible piece of evidence, the first crack in the wall of silence that had surrounded Lily's disappearance in over a decade. It was horrifying, yes, but it was also something. A thread, a terrible, slender thread, but one she had to grasp. Nodding, her vision blurred by unshed tears, Eleanor stood. The years of quiet grief, of forced composure, fell away, replaced by a raw, desperate urgency. 12 years. And now, a bicycle. What else lay buried, waiting to be found? The drive to Whispering Pines Road was a blur of familiar yet alien landscapes. Eleanor stared out the window of Detective Thorne's unmarked car, the familiar trees of Havenwood Creek rushing past, their autumn leaves a fiery tapestry of reds and golds that seemed too vibrant for the grimness of their mission. Whispering Pines Road was a newer development, one that had been in its early stages of construction 12 years ago. The Holloway place, as it was still known locally despite its Airbnb status, was one of the first houses built there, a sprawling ranch-style home set back from the road, surrounded by mature pine trees that lived up to the road's name. As they pulled into the driveway, Eleanor felt a chill that had nothing to do with the crisp October air. The property was a hive of activity. Police cars, a forensics van, yellow crime scene tape cordoning off the large, detached garage. Officers moved with a quiet, focused intensity. Thorne parked and turned to her. "Take your time, Eleanor. This won't be easy." She nodded, her throat too tight for words. Each step towards the garage felt like wading through deep water. The air thrummed with a strange energy, the macabre excitement of a discovery mixed with the somber reality of what it might mean. A man in a dusty construction vest, his face grim, met them at the garage entrance. "Detective Thorne, Miss Vance." He introduced himself as Ryan Miller, the foreman of the renovation crew. "We were breaking up this section for the new drain lines," he explained, his voice hushed, gesturing towards a gaping hole in the concrete floor. "Found it lodged right under there. Looked like it was deliberately placed before the concrete was poured." Eleanor's gaze was drawn inexorably to the pit. It was about 3 feet deep, the broken edges of the concrete jagged and stark. And there, nestled in the disturbed earth, caked in dirt and concrete dust, was a small, undeniably yellow bicycle. Even beneath the grime, the color was unmistakable. The white basket, though cracked and discolored, still clung to the handlebars, and peeking through the dirt, Eleanor could make out the faded, misshapen forms of what had once been bright plastic daisies. Sunshine. A strangled sob escaped her. Her hand flew to her mouth, as if to physically hold back the torrent of grief and memory that threatened to overwhelm her. It was her. It was Lily's. The joyful exuberance of her daughter, the carefree summer days, the bright yellow flash as Lily pedaled with all her might, it all came rushing back, a devastating wave of love and loss. "Is it?" Thorne began gently, but he already knew the answer. Eleanor could only nod, tears streaming down her face. She stepped closer, drawn by an invisible force, needing to see, to confirm the impossible. "The streamers," she choked out, pointing a trembling finger towards the handlebars. "She had purple and silver glitter streamers, Emily." Lily insisted on them. She said they were Sunshine's magic flying ribbons. Even caked with a decade of earth, faint traces of metallic color were visible. The forensic team, clad in white suits, worked meticulously around the pit, photographing, measuring, their movements precise and respectful. Eleanor watched them, a strange detachment settling over her. It was like watching a scene from a movie, a nightmare made real. "Any sign of anything else?" Eleanor forced herself to ask the question that clawed at her, the question that had haunted her sleep for 12 years. Thorne's expression was somber. "Just the bicycle, Eleanor. No human remains were found in the immediate vicinity. The team is expanding the search, of course, but so far it's just Sunshine." Relief, sharp and immediate, warred with the renewed agony of seeing Lily's beloved possession in such a desolate state. Just the bicycle. It was a small mercy, yet it deepened the mystery. Why bury a bicycle? What did it mean? As the forensic team prepared to carefully excavate Sunshine, a stooped figure approached, escorted by a uniformed officer. He was an older man, perhaps in his late 50s or early 60s, with thinning gray hair, a deeply lined face, and nervous, darting eyes that seemed to avoid direct contact. He wore a faded flannel shirt and work-worn jeans. "Miss Vance, Detective Thorne, this is Silas Blackwood," the officer said. "He's the caretaker for the property." Silas Blackwood. Eleanor vaguely recalled seeing him around town, a quiet, unobtrusive man who kept to himself. He'd been the caretaker for the Holloway place for as long as she could remember it being an Airbnb. "Mr. Blackwood," Thorne began, his tone neutral but firm, "we found a child's bicycle buried under the concrete in the garage. It's been identified as belonging to Lily Vance, who disappeared 12 years ago." Blackwood's eyes widened, a flicker of something surprise, fear, crossing his face before settling into an expression of bewildered concern. "A bicycle? Under the concrete? Good heavens, Detective, I know nothing about that. I just look after the place for Mr. Finch. He's the owner, lives in Switzerland now. Handles the guests, basic upkeep, that's all." "How long have you been the caretaker here, Mr. Blackwood?" Thorne asked. "Oh, a good 10 years, I reckon. Ever since Mr. Finch decided to start renting it out. And before that? Were you involved with the property during its construction?" Blackwood shifted his weight, his gaze flicking towards the garage, then quickly away. "Construction? No, not officially. I knew Alistair Finch, of course. Did a few odd jobs for him around town back then, but the main building was a big company from out of state." He paused. "The garage floor. Was it poured when the house was first built? Or was there work done later?" "According to county records, this house, including the garage, was completed in the summer 12 years ago," Thorne stated. "Around the same time Lily Vance disappeared." Blackwood wrung his hands. Terrible thing, that. Little Lily. The whole town was heartbroken. He shook his head, his eyes still avoiding Eleanor's. "But a bicycle? I can't imagine how it would have gotten there. Unless it was there before the concrete? Maybe some kids playing on the construction site? It was pretty open back then." His explanation sounded plausible, yet Eleanor felt a prickle of unease. There was something about his demeanor, a subtle tension in his posture, the way his gaze never quite settled. "We'll need a list of all guests who've stayed here, Mr. Blackwood," Thorne said, "and we'll need to speak with Mr. Finch in Switzerland." "Of course, Detective. Anything I can do to help," Blackwood said, a little too quickly, a little too eagerly. "I'll get you those records right away." A terrible, terrible discovery. As Thorne continued to question Blackwood, Eleanor's gaze drifted back to the pit where Sunshine lay. The bicycle was more than just an object. It was a tangible link to Lily, a silent witness to her last known moments. For the first time in 12 years, a flicker of something other than the dull ache of loss sparked within Eleanor. It was a fragile, terrifying thing. Hope. Hope that this unearthing, as grim as it was, might finally lead to answers. And with that hope came a chilling premonition that the quiet, unassuming town of Havenwood Creek still held its secrets tightly. The hours following the discovery of Sunshine were a maelstrom of emotion for Eleanor. The police had carefully extracted the bicycle, handling it with a reverence that Eleanor appreciated, though it was now an object of evidence, not a child's treasured toy. It was bagged and taken away for further forensic analysis, though Detective Thorne had cautioned her that after 12 years underground, the chances of finding usable fingerprints or DNA were slim. Numbly, Eleanor had answered Thorne's questions, recounting again the details of that awful July day, her mind replaying Lily's laughter, the sight of her yellow pigtails disappearing around the bend. Silas Blackwood, after providing guest records and contact information for Alistair Finch in Zurich, had been allowed to leave, though Thorne had made it clear he was to remain available. Back in the quiet solitude of her cottage, the one Lily had never returned to, Eleanor felt the fragile composure she'd maintained at the scene begin to crumble. The image of Sunshine, caked in dirt and entombed, was seared into her mind. It was a grotesque symbol, yet it was also the first concrete development in 12 agonizing years. She sank into the worn armchair in her living room, the one where she'd read Lily countless bedtime stories. For years, this room, like the rest of the house, had felt like a shrine, every object a painful reminder. Gradually, she'd packed away most of Lily's things, unable to bear the constant visual stab of her absence, keeping only a few treasured photographs and a small plush bunny Lily had named Carrots. Her gaze fell on her laptop. For years, she had been a member of an online forum, Hope's Beacon, Missing Loved Ones Support Community. It had been a lifeline, a place where she could connect with others who understood the unique agony of ambiguous loss, who shared her desperate need for answers, and who offered unwavering support without judgment. Her fingers trembled as she typed out a new post, the words tumbling out in a rush of grief and dawning hope. Subject: Lily's Sunshine. A breakthrough after 12 years? Dear community, today, something unimaginable happened. 12 years after my precious Lily, 8 years old, vanished from Havenwood Creek, disappeared. Police found her bicycle, Sunshine. It was buried under concrete in the garage of an Airbnb property not far from our home, a house that was under construction at the time she went missing. I don't know what to feel. Horror, grief, but also a tiny, terrifying spark of hope. The investigation is active again. I'm overwhelmed, but I wanted to share this with all of you who have been my rock for so long. Could this be it? Could we finally find out what happened to my Lilybug? She attached a photo. Thorne had allowed her to take a respectful, distant shot of the excavation site before Sunshine was fully removed. Then, with a shaky hand, she clicked Post. Almost immediately, the responses began to flood in. Messages of support, of shared shock, of renewed hope for Lily. Fellow parents of missing children, siblings, friends, they all reached out, their words of virtual embrace. Eleanor read through them, tears blurring her vision. A profound sense of gratitude washing over her for this community that had never forgotten Lily, even when the rest of the world seemed to. As she scrolled, a notification popped up for a private message. Expecting it to be from one of the forum moderators or a longtime member she'd grown close to, she clicked it open. Her breath hitched, her blood ran cold. The message contained a photograph. It was one she had shared on the forum years ago, a cherished snapshot of Lily, beaming, proudly astride Sunshine in front of their cottage. But this version was grotesquely, cruelly altered. Lily's smiling, innocent face had been crudely replaced with the severed, bloody head of a pig. "Oh, dear God," Eleanor whispered, her hand flying to her mouth, a wave of nausea threatening to overwhelm her. Below the horrific image was a short video clip. With trembling fingers, Eleanor pressed play, a part of her screaming not to, but another, desperate part needing to understand this new horror. The video was grainy, poorly lit. It showed gloved hands, a large cleaver, and what appeared to be the same pig's head from the photo, being brutally chopped on a wooden block. Then, the head was wrapped in clear plastic. The footage was sickeningly real, visceral. And beneath the media, a chilling, typed message. "Your Lily is as dead as this pig. She's rotting somewhere, just like Sunshine was. Accept it and move on. Stop digging." Eleanor gasped, bile rising in her throat. She slammed the laptop shut, stumbling towards the bathroom, barely making it before she retched violently into the toilet. Her body shook, racked with sobs and the horror of what she'd just seen. Who? Who could be so monstrously cruel? To target a grieving mother? To desecrate the memory of her child in such a vile way? After several minutes, when the heaving subsided, she splashed cold water on her face, her reflection a pale, haunted stranger. Steeling herself, she returned to the laptop. She had to document this. This was evidence. She reopened the laptop, forcing herself to look at the obscene message again, taking screenshots of the altered photo, the video, the text. Her mind raced. The timing, it was too coincidental. The bicycle is found, she posts about it, and almost immediately, this abomination appears. She clicked on the sender's username, Silent Truth 12. The profile was stark, private, no posts, no followers, no avatar. It looked like an account created for the sole purpose of sending this monstrous message. Her first instinct was to delete it, to erase this digital violation from her life. But a cold fury began to burn through the shock and nausea. This wasn't just random cruelty. This was a threat. Stop digging. Someone didn't want her to find answers. Someone connected to Lily's disappearance was watching. She immediately picked up her phone, her fingers fumbling as she dialed Detective Thorne's number. "Marcus," she said, her voice hoarse and trembling when he answered. "You need to see this. Someone just sent me the most horrible thing." Detective Thorne arrived at Eleanor's cottage within 20 minutes, his expression grim as she recounted the horrifying private message and showed him the screenshots and the stomach-churning video. He watched the footage of the pig's head being butchered with a professional detachment that Eleanor found both reassuring and chilling. "The timing is significant," Thorne mused, his gaze fixed on the laptop screen. "Whoever sent this knew about Sunshine being found, and they knew you'd posted about it. That narrows it down to someone who saw your post on the forum, or someone who was told about the discovery and your online activity. The user profile is new, almost certainly a throwaway account," he continued, tapping thoughtfully on his chin. "But the video, there might be clues. The background, the type of wood, any ambient sounds. Our tech guys will go over it frame by frame." He paused. "One thing that strikes me, Eleanor, is the quality. It's not sophisticated, but it's not amateurish either. And the trees visible briefly through what looks like a window in one shot, they look like alpine firs. European." "European?" Eleanor's mind immediately went to Alistair Finch, the owner of the Airbnb living in Zurich. "You think it could be him, Mr. Finch?" "It's a possibility we can't ignore," Thorne admitted. "He would have been notified about the bicycle by now, either by us or by Blackwood. If he's involved, this could be a scare tactic. We're already coordinating with Swiss authorities to speak with him." The thought that the owner of the property where Sunshine was buried might be taunting her from afar sent a fresh wave of revulsion through Eleanor. But why? What could he possibly gain? Thorne assured her they would do everything to trace the message and analyze the video. He advised her to stay off the forum for a while, or at least not to engage with any further private messages from unknown users. He left, promising to keep her updated, but the chilling encounter had shattered any fragile peace Eleanor had begun to feel. Someone was watching her. Someone new. Sleep that night was an elusive phantom. Every shadow in her room seemed to menace. Every creak of the old cottage sounded like an intruder. The grotesque images from the video replayed in her mind, a horrific loop. "Stop digging," the words echoed, a clear threat, but Eleanor Vance had been digging in one way or another for 12 years. She wouldn't stop now. If anything, this monstrous act had solidified her resolve. By 3:30 a.m., she gave up on sleep. The familiar routine of the morning loaf called to her, a sanctuary of warmth and purpose. She often went in early, finding a strange comfort in the quiet solitude of the bakery before the town awoke. Marge, the original owner who'd sold the bakery to Eleanor years ago but still helped out occasionally, had given her a key, trusting her implicitly. She dressed in the pre-dawn chill, her mind a whirl of fear, anger, and a desperate clawing hope. The drive through Havenwood Creek's deserted streets was usually peaceful, but tonight every shadow seemed deeper, every rustle of leaves more sinister. Her route took her past the turnoff for Whispering Pines Road. As she approached it, her headlights swept across the entrance. A flicker of movement. A light. Eleanor frowned, slowing her car. A light was on in the Holloway Finch house, just a faint glow from one of the windows, visible through the trees. But the property was an active crime scene, sealed off. No one should be there. As she watched, the light abruptly went out, plunging the house back into darkness. Her heart began to pound. Was it police? Thorne hadn't mentioned a continued overnight presence. It could be an officer doing a perimeter check, but why turn lights on and off like that? An instinct, sharp and undeniable, a mother's intuition honed by years of vigilance, compelled her. Instead of continuing towards town, Eleanor found herself turning onto the unpaved access road leading to the secluded property. She switched off her headlights as she neared the house, pulling her car onto the soft shoulder under the cover of the dense pines, engine off. The pre-dawn air was cold and carried the scent of pine and damp earth. Silence, thick and heavy, enveloped the property. She waited, her senses on high alert. Minutes stretched by. Then, she saw a dark figure moving stealthily from the side of the house, near where the garage was. The figure was carrying something bulky. Her breath caught in her throat. The figure moved towards a battered white van parked in the shadows near the tree line, a vehicle she hadn't noticed before. It wasn't a police vehicle. As the figure turned slightly, catching the faint ambient light from the moon filtering through the clouds, Eleanor recognized the stooped posture, the nervous gait. Silas Blackwood, the caretaker. What was he doing here at this hour at a sealed crime scene? He opened the back of the van, placed the bulky item inside, then seemed to hesitate, glancing around furtively before heading back towards the house. Eleanor's mind raced. She should call Thorne, but what if Blackwood was just... She didn't know what. What if it was nothing, and she raised a false alarm? Before she could decide, Blackwood re-emerged from the direction of the house, moving more quickly this time. He didn't appear to be carrying anything. He got into the van, the engine sputtered to life, and with its lights still off, the vehicle began to creep slowly down the driveway towards the main road. Eleanor's decision was made in an instant. She couldn't let him just drive away. Not after this. She waited until his van had turned onto Whispering Pines Road, heading away from town. Then she started her car, lights still off, and cautiously pulled out to follow. This was reckless, she knew. Dangerous. But the image of that light, of Blackwood's furtive movements, the sheer wrongness of it all, propelled her forward. Stop digging. The warning flashed in her mind. But something told her Silas Blackwood was digging himself deeper into whatever secrets this property held. The pre-dawn darkness was both a shield and a menace as Eleanor tailed Silas Blackwood's white van. She kept a significant distance, her own headlights off, relying on the faint glow of his taillights as they navigated the winding, empty stretch of Whispering Pines Road. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of her car. What was she doing? This was police work, not the domain of a grieving, desperate mother. Yet an undeniable force, a primal instinct, kept her foot on the accelerator. Blackwood wasn't heading towards Havenwood Creek. Instead, he drove deeper into the sparsely populated forested area west of town, a region of logging trails and isolated cabins. Eleanor knew this area vaguely. It was where the truly reclusive residents of the county made their homes. After about 15 minutes of tense pursuit, Blackwood's van slowed and turned onto an even narrower, unpaved track that Eleanor barely noticed in time. She drove past it, then quickly cut her lights, reversed, and carefully maneuvered her car onto the rough track, bumping over roots and stones. The track was barely wide enough for one vehicle, flanked by dense, towering pines that blotted out what little moonlight there was. She could no longer see Blackwood's taillights. Panic flickered. Had she lost him? She drove slowly, her ears straining for the sound of his engine. Then, rounding a bend, she saw his van parked haphazardly on a small, muddy pullover area, nearly invisible amongst the trees. His lights were off. Eleanor immediately stopped her own car, further back, pulling as far off the track as she could, engine and lights off. She was concealed by a thicket of young firs. Silence descended again, broken only by the drip of dew from the leaves and her own ragged breathing. What was he doing out here, in the middle of nowhere, at this ungodly hour? Then, a faint smell reached her nostrils, acrid and chemical, not the clean scent of wood smoke. It grew stronger, mingling with the odor of something burning. Peering through the trees, she saw a faint orange glow flickering deeper in the woods, not far from where Blackwood's van was parked. Thin wisps of dark smoke curled upwards, disappearing into the dark canopy. He was burning something. A cold dread washed over her. Evidence? What could he possibly be destroying in such a clandestine manner? She fumbled for her phone, her fingers clumsy with adrenaline. She needed to call Thorne. Now. The signal was weak. Just one wavering bar. Come on, she muttered, dialing Thorne's number. It rang once, twice. Thorne. His voice was gravelly with sleep, but instantly alert. Marcus, it's Eleanor. I followed Blackwood. He's out on an old logging trail, west of town. He's burning something. Her voice was a harsh whisper. Eleanor. What? You followed him? Where are you exactly? Are you safe? His voice sharpened with urgency and concern. I don't know the name of the trail. He left the Airbnb. I saw him. He was acting suspiciously. Now he's burning something in the woods. I can smell it, see the smoke. Stay in your car, Eleanor. Do not approach him. Give me any landmarks you can. I'm dispatching units, but it will take time to find you in the dark out there. As she tried to describe her surroundings, the dense pines, the muddy track, she saw movement near Blackwood's van. He emerged from the trees, dragging what looked like a large metal drum or barrel. Even from this distance, she could see it was blackened, soot-stained. A burn barrel. He wrestled it into the back of his van. His movements hurried, furtive. He kept glancing around, as if sensing he was being watched. "He's putting the burn barrel in his van," Eleanor whispered urgently into the phone. "He's leaving." "Don't follow him further, Eleanor. I repeat, do not engage. We'll try to intercept him. Stay put and keep your line open if you can. We'll find you." But as Blackwood slammed the van doors shut and the engine roared to life, a new, terrible thought struck Eleanor. What if the police didn't find him in time? What if he got away? Whatever he was doing completed, whatever evidence he was destroying, gone. Blackwood's van pulled back onto the narrow track, heading back the way they'd come, towards her. Panic seized her. She ducked down in her seat, praying her car was sufficiently hidden. The van rumbled past, its engine noise deafening in the stillness, its headlights briefly sweeping terrifyingly close to her hiding spot. He didn't slow. He didn't see her. As his taillights disappeared around the bend, Eleanor let out a shaky breath. Her call with Thorne had dropped due to the poor signal. He'd told her to stay put. It was the sensible thing to do, the safe thing. But the image of that burn barrel, the acrid smell of destruction, the sheer desperation in Blackwood's actions, it all screamed guilt. And whatever he was trying to hide was almost certainly connected to Lily. Against every rational instinct, against Thorne's explicit instructions, Eleanor started her car. She had to know where he was going. She had to see this through. She pulled back onto the track, following the faint impression of his tire tracks in the mud, her own small car, a fragile shadow pursuing a much darker secret. The track eventually led back to a slightly wider, though still unpaved county road. She saw Blackwood's van turn right, heading further west. She followed, maintaining a greater distance now, her fear warring with a grim determination. After several more miles, as the sky began to show the first faint pearly blush of dawn, Blackwood's van slowed again. He turned onto a very narrow, almost hidden driveway marked by a weathered, hand-painted sign. Blackwood. This had to be his home. Eleanor drove past the entrance, pulling over a quarter-mile down the road. Out of sight. Her hands were shaking. She'd found his lair. Now what? She tried Thorne again. The signal was still patchy, but it connected. "Thorne, I found his house. He's here. Off County Road 12, a private driveway marked Blackwood." "Eleanor, I told you not to follow him. Officers are en route to that area now based on your last call, but you need to leave. Get out of there. He could be dangerous." "He is dangerous, Marcus. I know it. He took something from the Airbnb, he burned something in the woods, and now he's here." As she spoke, she saw Blackwood get out of his van. He went to the back and began to unload the burn barrel, struggling with its weight. Then, to her utter bewilderment, he disappeared into his small, run-down house and re-emerged wheeling what looked like a heavy-duty, bright red industrial trolley or cart. "Marcus," she said, her voice tight with a new, undefined dread. "He's got some kind of red trolley. He's moving something heavy from his house, loading it into the van." The first pale light of dawn was filtering through the dense trees, casting long, eerie shadows as Eleanor watched Silas Blackwood's strange activities from her concealed position down the road. The red industrial trolley, so out of place in this rustic, isolated setting, added a surreal, horrifying dimension to the scene. What could he possibly be moving that required such equipment? He wrestled a large, indistinct shape from the trolley into the back of his white van. It was heavy. She could see the strain in his movements even from this distance. He then wheeled the empty trolley back into his dilapidated house. "Eleanor, listen to me very carefully." Detective Thorne's voice crackled urgently over the phone. "Our units are converging on your location. Do not approach his property. Do not let him see you. Your safety is paramount. Are you hidden?" "Yes. I'm well off the road. He can't see me," she assured him, though her heart was a frantic bird in her chest. "He's gone back inside." That was one trip with the trolley. Minutes crawled by, each one an eternity. Then Blackwood reappeared, pushing the red trolley again, this time laden with another heavy, shrouded object. He repeated the laborious process of transferring it to the van. He seemed agitated, constantly glancing around, his movements jerky and nervous. "He's made a second trip, Marcus," Eleanor whispered into the phone. "Whatever he's loading, it's substantial." A third trip. This time, after loading another bulky item, Blackwood heaved the red trolley itself into the back of the van and slammed the doors shut. He hurried to the driver's side, climbed in, and started the engine. "He's leaving!" Eleanor said, her voice rising in alarm. "He's loaded up the van and he's about to drive away." "Hold your position, Eleanor. Units are seconds out. Can you see which way he's turning when he hits the county road?" Thorne's voice was taut with controlled intensity. "There's only one way out of his driveway. He'll have to pass my general location to get to the main road." Eleanor watched as Blackwood's van bumped down the narrow driveway. She instinctively ducked lower in her seat as it approached the intersection with the county road, praying he wouldn't glance in her direction. The van turned right, heading back towards the more populated areas, possibly towards Havenwood Creek itself. "He's heading east on County Road 12, she reported. Just as Blackwood's van disappeared around a bend, Eleanor saw them two police cruisers, lights flashing but sirens silent, racing down the county road from the west. They must have been approaching without sirens to avoid alerting him. A third cruiser, with Thorne in the passenger seat, slowed as it passed her hiding spot, Thorne giving her a quick, sharp nod before accelerating after the others. Relief, immense and debilitating, washed over her. They had him, or they would. She waited a moment, then pulled out onto the road, following at a safe distance. Adrenaline still coursed through her veins, but the terror was beginning to be replaced by a profound, weary dread of what they might find in that van. Rounding a curve, she saw the scene unfolding. The police had executed a textbook moving blockade. Two cruisers angled to block the road ahead of Blackwood's van, while Thorne's vehicle had cut him off from behind. He was boxed in, with nowhere to go. Eleanor parked her car well back, her hands trembling so violently she could barely switch off the ignition. Officers, weapons drawn, were cautiously approaching Blackwood's van, shouting commands. She saw Blackwood slowly exit the vehicle, his hands raised, his face a mask of shock and dawning resignation. He was quickly handcuffed and moved to the side of the road. Detective Thorne, his expression unreadable, directed two officers towards the rear of the van. With gloved hands, they unlatched and swung open the heavy back doors. Eleanor couldn't see clearly from her vantage point, but she saw the officers recoil, their professional composure visibly shaken. One of them spoke urgently into his radio. Thorne moved swiftly to look inside, his body tensing. He turned, his face pale, and barked orders. Within minutes that felt like an eternity, the distant wail of an ambulance siren grew louder, closer, until the vehicle, lights blazing, pulled up to the chaotic scene. Unable to bear the suspense, the not-knowing Eleanor got out of her car, her legs unsteady, and began to walk towards the cluster of vehicles and personnel. A uniformed officer moved to intercept her, but Thorne saw her approaching and waved her through, his face etched with a profound gravity she had never seen before. "Marcus, what is it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, dreading the answer. Thorne put a steadying hand on her arm. His voice was low, heavy with an almost unbearable weight. "Eleanor, you need to prepare yourself. This is unimaginable." He led her towards the open back of the van. Paramedics were already there, working with urgent, focused movements. Eleanor's gaze fell upon the contents, and the world tilted, sound rushing out, replaced by a roaring in her ears. 3 black, heavy-duty bags. Body bags. Each one clearly containing a human form. A strangled cry escaped her lips. "Lily. Oh God. Lily." "They're alive, Eleanor," Thorne said quickly, his grip tightening on her arm as her knees threatened to buckle. "All 3 of them. Heavily sedated, very weak, but alive. Breathing." Alive? Her mind struggled to process the word, to reconcile it with the horrific sight before her. 3, not 1. As if in a dream, she watched as a paramedic carefully, gently, unzipped the top of the first bag. The pale, still face of a young woman was revealed. Her hair was long and flaxen, matted and dull, but unmistakably the color of Lily's. The features were sharper, older, the face of a young adult, not the round-cheeked 8-year-old seared into Eleanor's memory. But beneath the passage of years, beneath the pallor of whatever ordeal she had endured, there was no mistaking her. "Lily." Eleanor breathed, the name a prayer, a sob, an explosion of disbelief and agonizing hope. Her daughter. Lost for 12 years, presumed dead by so many, but here, alive. The paramedics were already moving to the other 2 bags, unzipping them to reveal 2 more young women, similarly unconscious, similarly pale, but alive. Across the way, Silas Blackwood, flanked by 2 officers, watched the scene, his face contorted. When his eyes met Eleanor's, a snarl twisted his lips. "You should have just accepted it," he spat, his voice raspy with venom. "She was gone. You should have let her be." The words, so similar to the anonymous message, hit Eleanor with the force of a physical blow. It was him, this monster. He had tormented her, not just by his actions 12 years ago, but again, just hours before, with that vile, digital taunt. Thorne nodded curtly to the officers, who began to lead the struggling, shouting Blackwood towards a police cruiser. Eleanor barely registered it. Her entire being was focused on the miracle, the horror, the incomprehensible reality unfolding in the back of that white van. Lily. Her Lilybug was alive. And she was not alone. The ambulance ride to Havenwood Creek Memorial Hospital was a surreal journey through a world that had suddenly, violently been remade. Eleanor sat beside the stretcher carrying her daughter, her hand clutching Lily's, which felt small and fragile yet undeniably real within her own. Lily's face, peaceful in its induced slumber, was a poignant canvas of past and present. The child Eleanor remembered was there in the delicate curve of her jaw, the sprinkle of faint freckles across her nose, but overlaid now were the lines of a young woman, aged 20, who had endured the unimaginable. 2 other ambulances carried the other young women, their identities still unknown, their stories yet to be told. Paramedics worked with quiet efficiency, monitoring vital signs, administering care. Thorne had assured Eleanor that all 3 were stable, though deeply sedated. At the hospital, a flurry of medical staff met them. Lily was whisked away to a trauma room, Eleanor following in a daze, answering questions, signing forms, her mind struggling to catch up with the tidal wave of events. Detective Thorne stayed by her side, a steadfast presence in the swirling chaos. Hours passed in a blur of waiting rooms, hushed consultations with doctors, and the constant, thrumming hope that Lily would soon awaken. Police officers stood discreetly outside the rooms where the 3 young women were being treated. Dr. Ramirez, a kind-faced neurologist, finally came to speak with Eleanor. "Miss Vance, Lily is physically stable. She's dehydrated and malnourished, but remarkably, there are no signs of recent acute physical trauma. We're still running tests, of course. The sedatives are strong. It will take some time for her to fully emerge." "The others?" Eleanor asked, her heart aching for the families who didn't yet know their daughters had been found. "Similar conditions," Dr. Ramirez confirmed. "We're working with Detective Thorne to identify them. Missing persons databases are being checked." It was late afternoon when a nurse gently touched Eleanor's arm. "Miss Vance, Lily is stirring. She's beginning to regain consciousness. Your presence might be comforting for her." Eleanor's breath caught. She hurried to Lily's private room, her steps quickening with a mixture of elation and trepidation. Lily lay in the hospital bed, connected to monitors that beeped softly. Her eyelids fluttered. Eleanor pulled a chair close, taking Lily's hand again, her thumb stroking the back of it. "Lilybug," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" Lily's eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then gradually clearing as she tried to take in her surroundings, the sterile white room, the unfamiliar sounds. Her gaze drifted, then found Eleanor's face. Confusion clouded her features, then a flicker, a tiny spark of dawning recognition in the depths of her blue eyes, so like her father's bravance. "Mom?" The voice was hoarse, weak, barely audible, but it was hers. It was Lily. Tears streamed down Eleanor's face. Tears of joy, of grief, of 12 years of pent-up anguish and love. "Yes, sweetheart, it's me. It's Mommy." Full awareness seemed to flood Lily's eyes then, followed swiftly by fear. Where am I?" Her gaze darted around the room. Where's Mr. Blackwood?" The name was a dark shadow in her voice. "You're safe, Lily," Eleanor said quickly, squeezing her hand gently. "You're in the hospital, Mr. Blackwood. He's been arrested. He can't hurt you anymore. You're safe now." Lily stared at her, tears welling in her own eyes, her expression a mixture of disbelief and dawning reality. I thought," she choked out, "I thought I'd never see you again." "I never stopped looking for you, Lily," Eleanor sobbed, leaning closer, brushing stray hairs from her daughter's forehead. "Never, not for a single day." Detective Thorne entered quietly with Dr. Ramirez. He waited patiently while the doctor did a quick check on Lily. "Emily," Thorne began gently, using the name he'd always known her by. "I'm Detective Thorne. We spoke briefly 12 years ago. Do you remember?" Lily frowned slightly, then a faint nod. "The policeman." "That's right. When you feel up to it, we'll need to ask you some questions, but only when you're ready." He paused. "The other two girls who were with you, Kayla and Juliana? They're here too. They're safe." Relief visibly washed over Lily's face. "Kayla? Jules? Are they okay?" "They're okay, Lily. Still sleepy like you were, but the doctors expect them to be fine." Lily's gaze drifted back to Eleanor, a profound weariness in her eyes, but also a nascent strength. He told us you were all gone," she whispered. "That the world outside was bad, dangerous. He said he was protecting us." "Protecting you?" Eleanor's voice was tight with barely suppressed rage. Lily nodded. "In the quiet room, under the house." Her eyes clouded with traumatic memories. "It was always dark. He brought food, sometimes books. He said our parents didn't want us, that he was our new father." "Lily," Thorne interjected softly, "can you tell us how he took you? That day you were riding Sunshine?" Lily closed her eyes for a moment, a shudder passing through her. When she opened them, they were filled with a chilling clarity. "I was on Sunshine, near the old Miller path. Mr. Blackwood, he was there, in his old truck. He said he had lost his puppy, a little golden one. He asked if I could help him look. He seemed so sad." Eleanor's heart clenched. The classic lure. So simple, so horribly effective on a kind-hearted child. "I wanted to help," Lily continued, her voice trembling. "We looked for a bit. Then he said the puppy might have gone into an empty house nearby, the one they were building. He had a bottle of juice. I was thirsty. It tasted funny. I got so sleepy. The next thing I remember, I was in the dark room with Kayla. She'd been there longer. The quiet room. The lies. The stolen years." Eleanor listened, horror warring with an immense gratitude that Lily was here, coherent, able to tell her story. "He had rules," Lily said, her voice hardening. "Lots of rules. We had to be good, quiet. He said if we made noise, the bad men outside would find us. But sometimes we heard things. Music from a passing car. Once, fireworks. We knew he was lying about the world being gone. The strength in her daughter, the resilience to have survived such an ordeal, to have held onto that sliver of truth, filled Eleanor with an aching pride. The road ahead would be long, filled with healing and therapy, but Lily was a survivor. Her Lilybug, against all odds, had come home. The days that followed were a whirlwind of medical evaluations, police interviews, and the slow, painful process of piecing together 12 years of stolen life. Kayla Bennett, who had been 9 when she was abducted from a park in a neighboring county 11 years prior, and Juliana Ramirez, also 9 when she vanished during a school trip to a state forest 13 years ago, gradually regained consciousness. Their stories, when they were able to tell them, mirrored Lily's, a seemingly kind man, a lure, a drugged drink, and then the terrifying awakening in Silas Blackwood's soundproofed underground bunker. Blackwood, Thorne explained to Eleanor, had meticulously planned his rescues. His house, inherited from reclusive parents, already had a large root cellar which he had expertly converted into a hidden, self-contained living space. He was a loner, with few visitors, allowing him to keep his horrific secret for over a decade. His journals, discovered by the police, painted a disturbing portrait of a deeply delusional man. He genuinely believed he was saving these girls from neglectful families or a dangerous world, casting himself as their benevolent protector. In Lily's case, he'd noted observing her playing unsupervised several times near the wooded path, the path where Eleanor had always felt Lily was safe, within earshot of home. The guilt of that, however irrational, gnawed at Eleanor, though Thorne was quick to reassure her. Predators like Blackwood are master manipulators, Eleanor. They look for any perceived opportunity. This was never your fault. The most chilling revelation from Blackwood's recent journal entries and computer files was his emerging plan. As the girls neared adulthood, they were becoming more difficult to control, their questions more pointed, their awareness of his deception growing. He had started making connections through the dark web, preparing to sell them into an international human trafficking ring. He was getting nervous, Thorne explained, his face grim. The discovery of sunshine at the Airbnb must have spooked him badly. He knew the renovation crew was working there. He probably buried the bike during the initial construction, a place he had access to through his odd jobs for Alistair Finch, thinking it was a perfect hiding spot. When it was found, he panicked. The threatening message to you, using AI to make the video seem European, was a desperate attempt to throw suspicion onto Finch and buy himself time. Eleanor shuddered. The light I saw at the Airbnb? What was he doing there? He went back for one last thing he'd stashed there years ago, a small lockbox containing old, incriminating photos he'd taken of the girls when they were younger. He burned those in the woods. Then he went home to enact his final plan. Drug the girls heavily, load them into the van using the stolen industrial trolley from a warehouse he occasionally did cleaning for, and transport them to a pre-arranged handover point. If you hadn't seen that light, Eleanor, Thorne said, his voice heavy with implication. If you hadn't trusted your instincts and followed him, they would have been gone again, this time likely forever. The weight of that what-if was immense, but it was overshadowed by the miracle of their rescue. The news of Kayla's and Juliana's survival had reached their families, and tearful, emotional reunions were taking place in other rooms of Havenwood Creek Memorial. Alistair Finch, the Airbnb owner in Zurich, was cleared of any involvement. He was horrified by what his caretaker had done and cooperated fully with the investigation, confirming Blackwood had indeed done some unsupervised work on the property during its initial construction phase, giving him ample opportunity to bury sunshine in the garage before the concrete was poured. For Eleanor and Lily, the journey of healing was just beginning. Lily, though physically recovering, bore deep psychological scars. Nightmares plagued her sleep. The world outside the confines of her hospital room felt vast, loud, and overwhelming. But with Eleanor constantly by her side, holding her hand, sharing stories of the intervening years, and with the patient guidance of therapists, small sparks of the old Lily began to emerge. She showed a quiet strength, a fierce determination that reminded Eleanor so much of the stubborn 8-year-old who had insisted on magic flying ribbons for her bicycle. She wanted to help Thorne, to ensure Blackwood faced justice, to prevent other children from suffering her fate. One crisp morning, a week after their rescue, Lily was strong enough to take a short walk outside in the hospital garden. Eleanor pushed her in a wheelchair, a soft blanket tucked around her legs. The autumn sun was warm on their faces, the air filled with the scent of late-blooming roses and damp earth. Lily looked up at the vast blue sky, a sky she hadn't truly seen in 12 years. A small, hesitant smile touched her lips. "It's beautiful, Mom," she whispered. Eleanor's heart swelled. "Yes, sweetheart, it is." The road ahead would be long and challenging. There would be court dates, more therapy, and the difficult task of reintegrating Lily into a world that had moved on without her. But they would face it together. After 12 years of darkness, of clinging to a hope that had often felt like folly, light had finally, miraculously, returned to Eleanor Vance's life. It wasn't just the unearthing of a buried bicycle that had brought Lily home. It was a mother's unwavering refusal to give up, a detective's quiet dedication to a cold case, and a young woman's incredible will to survive. And perhaps, as Eleanor looked at her daughter, truly seeing her for the first time in so long, it was also the universe, in its own mysterious way, finally setting right what had gone so terribly wrong on a silent summer afternoon 12 years before. The echoes of that day would always remain, but now they were joined by the promise of a new dawn.